Goosebumps. Book 44. Say cheese and scream. Say cheese and die. Again.
Picture perfect nightmare. Sourball. That's what Greg calls his English teacher, Miss Sour. He's a real grouch. And now he just gave Greg a big fat T on his oral support. He didn't believe Greg's story about the camera Greg found last summer, about the pictures it took, and the evil things that happened. Poor Greg. He just wanted to prove old Sourball's wrong. But now that he's dug up the camera, bad things are happening. Really bad things. Just like the first time. Reader beware, you're in for a scare. I'm sorry about that, Jones. I just really like to add the creepiness factor when I read these books. I'm not going to like this book.
Came out in I don't know, 1996?
Whoa, this book's old.
Craig brinks. A shiver ran down the back of my neck as Mr. Sawyer called my name. I had been slumping low in my seat in the last row of the classroom. I tried to hide behind Brian Webb, the big gorilla of a kid who sits in front of me, and I folded my hands and prayed that Mr. Sawyer wouldn't call on me to give me my report next. Craig Brandt, thanks, he called. I felt another cold shiver. Then my legs started to shake as I climbed to my feet. Then my throat tightened until I could barely breathe. I hate giving reports in front of the whole class, especially when I haven't had much time to practice. Especially when we're not allowed to have notes. Especially when half of our grade in English depends on how we do on things on this report. I cleared my throat and made my way up to the front of the classroom. I was halfway there when Donnie Green stuck his big white sneaker into the aisle and tripped me. I stumbled, but didn't fall. The whole class exploded in laughter anyway. Mr. Sawyer frowned at Donnie. Donnie, do you have to trip every person who walks by you? He demanded. Yes, Donnie replied with a straight face. And once again, the whole class burst out laughing. Everyone thinks Donnie's a riot. Everyone but Mr. Sawyer. Mr. Sawyer didn't think anyone is funny. That's why they call him Mr. Sourball. Sawyer. He probably wouldn't think that was funny either. Mr. Sawyer is tall and thin and nearly bald. He never kids around. He never smiles. His mouth is always puckered, as if he's just bitten into a lemon. Sourball Sawyer. He's sort of a legend at Pitt's Landing Middle School. Everyone tries not to get him. My best friends, Mitchell, Bird, and Shari, were lucky. We're in Miss Folsom's class. I was the only one who got stuck with a Sourball. I stepped up beside his desk and cleared my throat again. I wondered if everyone could see my knuckles shaking, my face felt burning hot. My hands were cold as ice. Does everyone get this nervous when they stand in front of the class? Mr. Sawyer folded his pale, skinny hands on his desk and cracked his knuckles. Okay, Greg, let's hear your true story, he said. I cleared my throat for the 1,000th time. I took a deep breath. Then I started to tell the story for what happened to my friends and me last summer. I was hanging out with my friends, Bird, Mitchell, and Sherry. We had nothing to do, and we were kind of bored, so we dared each other to do something exciting. We dared each other to sneak into the Kaufman house. Mr. Sawyer raised a hand to interrupt me. He frowned his sort of frown. What's the Kaufman house? It's a haunted house, Donnie Greeny called out. It's where Donnie lives, Brian Webb mumbled, loud enough for everyone to hear. It got a bit of a laugh, but Mr. Sawyer raised his both hands for quiet, and gave everyone his lemon expression. It's a deserted old house in my neighborhood, I told him. We went inside, down to the basement, and we found an old camera. And that's what my story is about, because the camera has evil powers. Mr. Sawyer groaned and rolled his eyes. Some kids laughed, but I took another deep breath and continued my story. It's an instant camera. The picture popped right out, but it was never the picture we snapped. It always showed something terrible happening. I took the old camera home. I snapped a photo of my dad's new station wagon. The photo slid out. In the photo, the station wagon was totaled, completely wrecked. And then, a few days later, my dad was in a terrible accident. The photo came true. I glanced around the room to see how my story was going over. A few kids were laughing. Others were staring at me hard, trying to decide if I was for real. Brian Webb tried to make me lose it. He stuck his two pointer fingers into his nostrils and twirled them around. He thinks he's funny, but he's just gross. They snatched up of my friend Bert Arthur, I continued, and his little league game. Bert smiled and posed for the camera. The photo showed him lying unconscious on the ground. 30 minutes later, a kid hit a line drive. It smacked Bert in the head. Bert fell unconscious on the ground. Just like the photo. I heard some nervous gigglings from the back of the room. I glanced up to see puzzled expressions on all faces. Brian still had his fingers in his nose. I turned away. No way I was going to laugh at that. Mr. Sawyer had his elbows on his desk and his round, bald head buried in his hands. His face was hidden, so I couldn't tell if he liked my report or not. Then something even more scary happened, I continued. I brought the camera to Sherry Walker's birthday party. I snapped Sherry's picture, standing next to a tree. Then when the photo popped out, it showed the tree, but not Sherry. It's like she was invisible or something. And then, a few minutes later, Sherry disappeared. A few kids gasped. Some others laughed. Mr. Sawyer still had his face buried in his hands. A couple of days later, Sherry came back to him, but now we were too frightened to keep the camera, so we took it back to the Kaufman house. And we met this strange guy, dressed all in black. He was at the bench of the camera. He told us that the camera had a curse on it, and, to my surprise, Mr. Sawyer jumped to his feet. "That will be enough," he snapped. "Excuse me?" I wasn't sure. I heard him correctly. The room went silent. Mr. Sawyer shook his head. Then he narrowed his watery brown eyes at me. "Greg," he snapped. He said, "I have some very bad news for you." And that was the end of chapter 2. For the rest of the summer, a couple weeks, I will read chapter 2 to you and make a video for this for you. So I hope you enjoyed this little first installment of a Goosebumps book.